This is TWiT.
We'll catch you up on the saga of the Apple Watch, which is now officially, is it for sale or not for sale? It's for sale now.
It is for sale. It's back for sale.
Okay.
The
president let us all down and did not overturn the International Trade Commission ruling that Apple's watch infringed on Masimo's patents and could not be sold in the U.S. Apple preemptively pulled the Apple Watch Ultra and I think, was it the Series 9, the ones that do blood pulse oximeter readings, pulled them all out of the stores. But then put them right back because a court came in and said, well, wait a minute. And injunction has stayed that. Boy, the lawyers were working over the holidays. Has stayed that until a couple of weeks from now. So they may still have to do that. Meanwhile, they are furiously working. There are some Apple employees who've been at the Apple campus all Christmas, sadly working, tippy-tapping with their elven hammers on some sort of software update that would avoid the import ban. Am I up to date now?
You're up to date. Basically all that happened was that Apple had to run down the clock before they could start filing appeals, and before a court could basically the federal government had to say, okay, we are not going to get involved with this before they would start to hear appeals. As soon as they filed an appeal, the court did not side with Apple. They just simply said that, okay, you can continue to sell Apple Watches while we settle this, while this is going through the courts. Masimo, CEO, has been very, very clear that say, well, go ahead, Apple, if you want to try to create a software fix. I mean, you got to keep busy in these trying times, but we insist that it's a hardware problem. It's not a software problem. You will not be able to satisfy this patent infringement by just patching the Watch OS. So again, good luck.
It is not unprecedented. President Obama 10 years ago vetoed an ITC patent ruling that would have banned older models of the iPhone and iPad. So that was not
Samsung, not an American company. Massimo is actually an American company, and so political, and of course the political tenor of big tech and things like that. It's a tougher case all around. Although this is, I mean, it strikes me that this process, like Andy said, they're waiting and then they do this, and having this be paused is a good idea because the idea is you don't want to do damage, and having the watches not on sale is doing damage to Apple's business when there are still more court fights to be had in the future. Also, like, we all know the end result of this is not and then the Apple Watch was never sold again, right? There is a process to be worked through while negotiations are probably going on sporadically. And at the end, somebody will get some level of satisfaction. And, so the process continues perhaps endlessly. Who knows?
Wesley Hilliard writing in Apple Insider this paragraph, you can decipher for your very own self. The ITC could deny the extended stay on or before January 10th, but if Apple's software update passes customs investigation, the Apple Watches could go back on sale as soon as January 12th. Apple's software approach with customs would prove a victory, according to the ITC. I don't even know how to chart that. So right now, are they selling it? They can, but I think they are. Okay, they put them back on the shelves.
They're back on the shelves now.
Okay, but until January 10th.
You need more yarn. You need more red yarn for your board.
And the reality is, I mean, I think that there was some number that was floating around, like Apple loses $185 million or $135 million a day. But the reality of that is that there was probably a surge right before it happened. Right. They flushed the market in Best Buy and everywhere else with it. The chances of Apple losing very much money on this so far is probably pretty low. I do believe, though, I think we talked about this in the last show, that this all came up because Apple went after Masimo over their watch. So the thing is that I think that that's what opened this can of worms. I think that Masimo, I don't think that Masimo took on this legal, this is 2018. I think that Masimo built a watch that looks exactly like or very close to an Apple Watch. And I believe that what opened the can of worms, as I was reading through this and through a bunch of articles, and I don't have it right in front of me, unfortunately, but that what opened the can of worms is Apple sued Masimo over patent infringement over their watch. And Masimo was like, "Oh, really?" and then they went the other direction, and that's what I think that Apple unwrapped this on their own. Like I don't think that I think Apple. This was in addition to meeting with a company and then not making a deal with them and then taking their technology, that's step one of probably thing they shouldn't have done. Step two is going after them over their watch. But I think I believe that was in one of the many articles that I was scanning through to go through this, is that Apple actually kind of opened the can of worms after they had created the can of worms, and so I think that this is something that, again, Masimo has said they're willing to have a conversation about, royalties. Like, it's not like it's, as Jason said, it's not like that it's going to go away. It's just Apple's just not wanting to pay another dollar, pay $1 a watch for that process.
I don't think that timeline is correct. I'd have to double check my own notes from a couple of weeks ago, but I think that they launched their lawsuit before Apple did anything counter. This lawsuit this action has been going on for quite a while.
The Wall Street Journal, in kind of an unprompted article a couple of days ago, all about Joe Chiani, who's the CEO of Masimo, featuring family photos from early days. Just so you know, there's Joe with in a striped shirt with a page boy haircut with his mom. I don't know why, in Alabama. And then here's Joe a little later on the waterfront in Southern California after getting his master's degree. I couldn't quite parse this. Like, again, what is Apple up to? Is it? I feel like Apple has some clout with the Journal and may have kind of implied that Masimo is a patent troll, that Chiani has done this before and is kind of aggressive. They do point out that it's cost him a lot of money.
That story is not particularly meaningful. I mean, I read it hoping it would be like why he's doing it, and the answer is like the last line of it. He's like, because it's right. I'm like, okay, right.
He's done this before. The Journal points out in 2006, he won a 7-year patent dispute with Nellcore that also made a pulse oximeter. In 2016, he sued Royal Philips. So he's done this before. This is they're estimating $100 million lawsuit for him. So, but as to who did what when first and so forth, they don't really, I don't think, really clear that up. 2013, Masimo showed a portable pulse oximeter that hooked up to Apple devices. A few months later, Apple reached out. This is from the Journal article. Representatives of the company met in 2013. Apple officials said, "We didn't dig deep into the technology. The meeting didn't last long. We never met in person again." This is relevant because Masimo says they met with Masimo to steal the technology. At the time of the Apple Watch development, says the Journal, Apple met with many other small players, not just Masimo, quoting the company. Apple also said the two never got close to working together because Masimo was more focused on the clinical side. And this lends credence to what you were saying, Alex, that, hey, just as long as you stay in your lane, Masimo, and don't go into the consumer side, we might not have a problem. A few months after that initial meeting, Apple did hire Masimo's chief medical officer. Later, it added a top engineer who was working at a Masimo spinoff, as well as dozens of other Masimo employees. Those employees did testify in a later trial that they did not bring any information to the company. In fact, Apple said explicitly, don't. But what's in your brain is in your brain. 2019, 6 years later, Apple publishes patents listing the former engineer of the Masimo spinoff as the inventor. Founding co-inventor of Masimo's technology said, "It felt like a knife in my stomach. It was truly painful." Massimo sued in 2020.
And remember, that guy, another report said that guy who left Masimo actually approached Apple. That they didn't try to recruit him. He apparently approached them, and then he was also a bad cultural fit and didn't last at Apple. So they did all of this, and then like within a year, I think he was gone because he wanted to like his own team, and like he was a big surprise because I mean, if there's ever a company that just is a bad cultural fit for almost everybody, it's Apple. So it's a mess.
Masimo has two complaints: one with the Federal Trade Commission, but also a trade secret case over this, transfer of knowledge. That went to trial according to the Journal, but had a hung jury last spring and is scheduled to go back in court this year.
Yeah. And if that's significant, it was a hung jury because one of the 6 jurors that could not, 5 agreed, one could not agree on a verdict, and that's what caused the hung jury. So it's not as though there was like, that's why jury trials are super, super weird. All you need is one person. And that's why you settle rather than let this go in front of a jury.
This is one of those cases where both sides are pretty intractable. Apple says we're not going to let a patent troll win ever because that would just open the door to other patent trolls. And Masimo says, no, we're not going to let somebody steal our technology, even if they're the biggest company in the world. We're going to fight. It is a big fight for them. They have $144 million a year profit, and they've spent $100 million of that on this suit.
It really does seem like like you're trying to do anyone who tries to paint Masimo as a patent troll is really actively trying to smear the company, because this is a company that has a long history in biomedical research and biotech. Yeah. This isn't like a company that you've never heard of because they buy patents and they buy struggling companies just to have a patent portfolio. So there's still, of course, a lot to discuss about this, but the idea of, oh, well, this is just another company that's trying to hold up a big company for a big settlement. That's
Kiani says we're willing to settle with Apple, but they have not approached us.
And the issue is that not only are they not a patent troll, but this is a core product for them. And Apple will make, if you look at like a LiveCore is doing, has the same complaints about Apple doing things they're doing. This becomes an existential threat for them, because if everybody has an accurate or semi-accurate glucose monitor on their watch, if that actually, comes out and starts to all of the blood oxygen, the chances of them buying other products becomes very low. Like even if those products are more accurate or better, it's not going to matter. They have one that is good enough, and that is, so it's a real, for blood oxygen, glucose is next, right? Right. Apple doesn't want to fight that one either. But blood oxygen, with the blood oxygen level, people, once they have something that's good enough, that's always on their wrist, that came with their watch, the chances of moving over. So it's a real problem for Masimo. I think that I really feel like Apple should find a way to, I can understand wanting to make it feel like even if they lose, they want to make sure that you realize that someone spent $100 million it's for every little company, like, hey, this is what it takes to win, is to, so even if they lose this, they win in the sense of everyone looks at what the fight's going to look like if you get into it.
Yeah. Moss, it's interesting. There's a little zinger from Kiani at the end of his Bloomberg Technology interview. He said, part of the problem here is Apple isn't building their stuff in the U.S. There'd be no import ban if they built it in the U.S. We build our stuff in the U.S. Little zing.
That is a zinger.
Little zing. You can't block import of something if it's made in the America. That would be an interesting choice for Apple, is to say, well, okay, we'll just build it here.
Be hard choice.
More expensive than
doing what they're doing now. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't, should somebody like me who loves his Apple Watch Ultra and uses the blood oximeter from time to time, should I feel bad about this?
This is why we have courts, so we don't have to feel bad.
Let them decide.
Let them figure it out.
Okay.
Law eases the pain.
Let somebody who can't be fired from their job tell me whether I should feel bad or not.
I'm
happy with that.
I'm good with that. Listeners of this program get an ad-free version if they're members of Club TWiT. $7 a month gives you ad-free versions of all of our shows, plus membership in the Club TWiT Discord, a great clubhouse for TWiT listeners. And finally, the TWiT Plus feed with shows like Stacy's Book Club, The Untitled Linux Show, and more. Go to twit.tv/clubtwit. And thanks for your support.